Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FourCast is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This episode of FourCast is brought to you by Ford, featuring voice-activated sync, AppLink. Now you can control select smartphone apps with your voice so you keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road. Check it out in the 2012 Ford Fiesta and at Ford.com/technology. And by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies on your PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or TV instantly, all streamed directly to you, saving you time, money, and hassle. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit.
What sort of future do you think we're heading for? How will we live as we slip into the 21st century?
Welcome to FourCast episode 97. I'm Tom Merritt.
And I'm Scott Johnson.
And once again, Scott, we meet on the field of battle. The battle with the future.
Yes. Who will win today's battle with the future? Who knows, but I bet we have guests here to help us fight this battle.
Like children's soccer, we will all be winners.
Indeed.
Joining us today, Natania Barron, author, blogger, and senior editor at geekmom.com. Welcome, Natania.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Can't wait to hear your future predictions. Also joining us, Zach Holder, Apple Genius. That's a title. That's not just a self-allocation. Geek, musician, FX specialist. And I believe I have this right. Are you not future slayer of the sentient Siri?
It could happen. There's always a chance of the uprising happening.
Yeah, well, that's good to know that we're safe with you there. Let's start off with a prediction from a listener coming from Ed, who says, I've recently been reading Peter Hamilton's Commonwealth saga and Void trilogy. In the universe, most humans have memory cells implanted after puberty. These memory cells record the memories, thought processes, and personality of a human. Many humans also go to specialty clinics to back up into their secure memory store, which is basically a fancy ultra-high security data center. In the event of death and destruction of the memory cell, these secure memories are implanted into a clone. So you always got your memories. Ed thinks within 1,000 years, our society will take advantage of a similar technology, but take it one step further. I predict that humans of the future will be embedded in an ultra-high bandwidth Wi-Fi network. Memories will be automatically synced up with a secure store, much like carbonite on steroids. At this point, murder will carry similar charges to assault or destruction of property. Real estate in high connectivity areas will be at a premium, as humans pay premiums to live and work in high bandwidth areas to ensure they're always properly backed up.
Wow. I like the prediction, but I kind of disagree. I think that he's onto something, though, and I think where it actually ends up is we will have a data store of at the ready cells that are ready to have memories planted in them. So in other words, when we start getting a little old, or we start getting a little groggy, or we forget this or that, we just need a little bit of a boost. We go to these cell banks, we plug in our heads, and these fresh cells come in, and they tell our current cells to offload everything they've got. They take it, and they're sort of renewed, and they're awesome for a long time until you have to go in for another dose. It's kind of like, Botox for your memories, sort of. And that's how we'll boost it. The idea that we'll be...
You don't think it's going to be wireless? I like the Wi-Fi part of it.
I like it. I just don't think that ends up happening. Just think about like the hacking that would go on in this weird Wi-Fi network of memory cells, and how we would how are you going to do when somebody accidentally kills you and the service is down or whatever. I'm throwing current first world problems at this future prediction, and perhaps that's unfair, but there's something about it that strikes me as a little too lofty, perhaps in our crazy ass category, but maybe not quite in something that's as realistic.
Natania, are you more positive on this, or are you with Scott?
I'm kind of negative. I sort of feel like there's things that we need to forget, and maybe we're not so good at deciding that for ourselves. And if we start backing everything up, then
we can come up with an algorithm for that.
Yeah, I know, but then you can like have versions of yourself, because everyone knows that person who has a completely different record of what actually happened. And the way that our biology works with adrenaline and stress and things, we remember things differently for certain reasons. And I don't know, I feel like Twitter's like that sometimes too, and Facebook. Everyone wants to document every memory and experience, but maybe it's okay if we let them go.
Yeah, the versions is pretty scary, right? You could be having an argument, somebody said, you would have never said that 5 years ago. Oh, really? Let's pull up my version from 5 years ago and ask it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
Zach,
I think it's a little dystopian.
Zach, we've got 2 against. Well, 1.5, really. Scott's not against. He just doesn't think the Wi-Fi part's work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Scott on the Wi-Fi part. Without going like full implementation of hardware into you, the point of the cellular backup, it actually works better as a physical implant and removal process. What I would be concerned about is, just like Scott said, you miss a backup. So imagine you get married and something happens a week later and your last backup was 2 weeks ago. So that could be an awkward conversation with your significant other.
Sorry, we're not married as far as my backup's concerned.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my bottom line with this is it's not so much about, because we're talking about brain cells here and they have kind of a expected lifespan. They have a certain point where they start to break down and sort of fall apart. I'm more interested in the renewal of that stuff than I am necessarily backing up the ones I have. And I think you kind of can do that naturally by bringing in the new stuff, transferring old memories into new cells, and now they're vibrant and awesome again. And then, if you still die from some horrible accident, them's the breaks. Death's still a thing, and I think I'm okay with that still. But at least you had good memories when you died, I guess.
I tend to agree with Natania that it becomes too complicated to manage all the different things that you would have in your personality and versions and memories backed up. But at the same time, I also think that if we got to the point where this technology was actually feasible, and I'm totally disagreement with you, Scott. Like, I want the Wi-Fi. I want the constant. I don't want that 2-week scenario that Zach's talking about. I want that wireless instant backup. I figure if we can download personalities, we can do a stable encrypted Wi-Fi connection. But maybe I'm just too optimistic. I don't know. But I think we'd have an entirely different conception of what a person is at that point. So we're thinking of it in our, we're us, but even ourselves are not the same as they were 10 years ago, and physically and mentally. And I think just the way people have different perceptions of privacy depending on whether they've grown up with the internet or not, that people would probably have different perceptions of personhood if they grew up with this technology. I think the big question is, could we even do this? And maybe what Natania's reacting to is not just a choice where it's like, well, I don't really want to have versions of me, but it may just be impossible. There may be a physical limit that makes it impossible to store versions of a person. I don't know if we can detail a personality at that level.
And there you have it.
That's what I think.
Thus saith the Tom.
Send us your predictions. Email fourcastpodcast@gmail.com or post them up at our website, fourcastpodcast.com. Let's get into the short-term predicting. These are things you think will happen sooner rather than later, maybe the next few years. And Natania, let's start with you. What do you have in your short-term crystal ball?
Well, in my short-term crystal ball, I love really good RPG video games, and I love novels. And the best game I played in the last 5 years, easy, is the original Dragon Age video game. And I think that in the next 10 years, we're going to start seeing a lot more games that go into the realm of really interactive novels. I think they kind of really did a lot of really amazing things with that first game. I'm not sold on the second game, but I think that it really says a lot for the experience of a gamer, also someone who is interested in storytelling, to really affect the world that they're in. And I think that, in 10 years, we're going to be seeing a lot more of these, really, really complicated algorithms behind the scenes, but making it feel totally natural that you're just literally, participating in a story that you have as much, it feels like you have as much, interaction as your normal life.
So, Natania, you and I are in agreement. Dragon Age Origins was a superior game to its successor, Absolutely. Dragon Age 2. And the problem with Dragon Age 2 was, I don't want to get too deep into a game review here, but the problem was they forgot this piece you're talking about. They forgot how powerful that can be for a player. And I know they were trying to say, all right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a game that sold okay, but we're going to make it appeal to a broader audience by dumbing some of that down, making it more action-oriented, and kind of give them something that's a little bit more mainstream. At least I think that's what they thought they were doing. And instead, they kind of got a bit of a backlash, not just from the stalwart folks who really enjoyed the first game and appreciated that interactive narrative, but also those who were new to the series were like, well, this isn't very good. This isn't a great game. This is just sort of, they felt like they could sort of see through that as well. So it's interesting that kind of backfired on them. And I hope that that's a sign, because originally I saw it as a sign that, oh no, a company as big and as smart and as awesome as BioWare is taking this easy road and saying, well, let's just dumb it down for the masses. And that made me concerned about your future not taking place, because I agree, I think it'd be a wonderful future. But instead, I think the backlash maybe will help your case. I think maybe we'll hit milestones more frequently and more and quicker. We just need developers and creative minds to go with their instincts and really commit to it. And if they're going to go down that road, a good throwaway action game is fine if that's what you're committing to. But if you're going to commit to something with that kind of deep interactive narrative, I think you have to go all in or go home, basically.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the hope in that too comes from the fact that just like almost every industry right now, the video game industry is experiencing a lot of even ground in a lot of places. You've got some amazing things happening out of indie studios that are, and to be fair, they've spent like 8 years making Dragon Age, the first game, and then it was like, a couple years turnaround for the second game. So there wasn't quite that level of real, attachment, I don't think, and different people were involved. But I think my hope is that there's going to be more people out there that are willing to take the risks and say, hey, we sold a whole lot more of this really complicated game, and people are really responding to it. And it's also, not to bring the girl-boy thing into it, but I think women responded really well to Dragon Age, the original game, much more than the second one, because of that interactivity, that ability that, our brains work that way. And it felt like we had a lot more going. We also had characters that we could identify with. You can certainly do that to some extent. Mm-hmm.
Do you actually play a lot of indie games?
I'm a mom, so I don't have a whole lot of time. But I also work in the video game industry, so I spend time, seeing what's going on. And I think a lot of really amazing things are coming out of, the indie world right now.
See, the reason I ask is, this is a great example. Dragon Age Origins, the team that worked on that was kind of a do or die team that they spent like I said 8 years working on this. And a lot of the big progressive and fun games I'm getting into are ones that are by indie developers who are this is if this doesn't work, they've got nothing. And so I kind of like the fact they're pushing the boundaries of trying to make it more intellectual. It sounds weird to say that about playing a video game, but I love the games where where it actually involves thinking and problem solving, and there's a little bit of comedy in the mix. It's a lot more fun to me than just your typical hack and slash.
Well, right. Yes. And the thing to consider too, BioWare is certainly I wouldn't classify them as an independent developer by any means, but it takes guys with a bunch of money who have maybe the most to risk in a marketplace that is larger for them than, say, some small downloadable game from some small independent group. They have a lot to lose on the shoulders of a game like that. And so when they make a misstep like Dragon Age 2, you hope anyway that BioWare can recover from that, and they certainly can. So can EA, so can everybody else associated with it. So they don't have to go away, but others can learn from it. And I hope that that's what we see from indie development. We see more awesome sort of, be they RPGs or not. Like, I'm really excited tomorrow to play the new Drake's Fortune game, Uncharted 3. And it'll be here first thing tomorrow. I can't wait to get my hands on it. Totally stoked about it. And most of the reason I'm excited is that story has me in its grasp. And I'm totally stoked to see how it all plays out. It's not as interactive of a story. In other words, I'm not really controlling the narrative like you do in a game like Dragon Age or other RPGs, but I still maintain that we are in an age where developers can really tell us compelling stories and do it in a way that really pushes the genre forward. Let's hope Dragon Age 3 is a return to form like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think,
Tom? What do you think?
Our immersive RPG that you're talking about will come from a big studio like a BioWare or maybe a Blizzard or somebody, or will it arise from some creative young gun indie developer?
I kind of have arguments for both sides, because I think it's kind of the new wave in storytelling, and as an author, I think that not to go even further, but I think this is kind of where things are going, and what, people certainly want to be able to interact with their stories. And I think good things could come out of either side. Whether or not really big businesses are going to be willing to bank on that is another question. I mean, BioWare has a history, Mass Effect obviously being a very similar style kind of thing. They certainly have done that niche really well. And I hope, because I loved the Dragon Age story. I mean, I'm total epic fantasy geek, so it was, I had to marry Alistair in the end. It was awesome, like I was in the story. Don't tell my husband, but I think there's definitely benefits and drawbacks to either side. I kind of hope it kind of happens at the same time, and I'd love to see a kind of head to head and see, what critics and players really have to say about it. Because in the end, it's really who's going to buy it is going to make the decision of whether this kind of thing continues on. It's always the money that talks.
Just to tack something on the end of that, if history is any teacher in all of this in the industry, what usually happens is an indie developer or somebody who is small may become big one day. And I'm even looking at BioWare as an example. When they were just setting out in the early 90s, and they came along and were picked to take the license up to do the D&D games that they did, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and Icewind Dale and all that. They were unknown. Nobody really knew what to expect, and they blew everybody's mind with those games. And then that became a new standard that is still to this day. People are they themselves still use some of these same ideas and methods that they used all the way back with Baldur's Gate. I think what happens is indie developers come in fresh without a lot of risk, and they come up with some awesome new idea. It becomes a hit of some sort. Let's look at something like Minecraft or whatever. And then what happens after that? The big boys swoop in. They either get bought out, they get a ton of funding, they become huge on their own, they become the next Blizzard, or somebody else takes the idea, takes it to the next level, and then you've got big mainstream games coming out that are using this great new mechanic or this great new idea or whatever, and then they'll beat that to death while indie developers are out there innovating again. I think that's the cycle, and we'll probably see that moving forward, is my guess.
All right, let's move over to you, Zach. Your short-term prediction, next few years, what do you got for us?
Actually, after working on a couple college campuses recently, I'm thinking in the next few years, we're going to see less and less actual physical book libraries, especially on college campuses. For the most part, most of the information that we need or look for has already been digitized. In fact, a lot of people know that the CAPTCHAs that people hate signing into when they forget their password, all those are actually set up to have people figure out what words are on the screen, not as a protection, but also goes to a database that says, okay, we scanned in this word, the computer doesn't know what it is yet. And so by enough people using that same word over and over again, they go, okay, that must be the word the, even though it's typed bizarrely. And so the computer learns it and it says, okay, the book scanned this, that's what that word is, and it digitizes it. It makes a text version instead of a photo version. So I think the next few years, especially because now we have access to internet access pretty much almost everywhere now. We have all these books like the Kindle, we have the Kindle apps, we have the Nook, we have all these different devices. The physical holding of a book, as much as it is enjoyed by people, I think it's going to end up being kind of a thing of the past. It's not as a necessary tool as it was for recording history, especially because we can do things now and keep copies of it multiple thousands of places at the same time.
It's interesting because I'm actually really glad you brought this up. This comes up on the show occasionally. What is the future of libraries? What is the future of publishing? And I always love hearing what Tom has to say on the subject because it's typically pretty enlightening. But where I come down on this sort of thing generally is that books are going to become more and more of a collector's thing. Like for example, right now on my webcomic site, we have people who want a book version of the comics. They're looking for this book I've been promising for years, and they're constantly emailing me about it. I've finally decided to just put my nose to the grindstone and get the stupid thing done so that they can have this book. Well, why do they want that? Everything they're going to get in that book is on the site. But they want this hardbound thing that they can stick on a table and open anytime they want, and they want a signature, and they want this thing to sort of embody the thing they love about the comic. And I think that never goes away. I don't know. Maybe one day it becomes some sort of, a hollow cube that you put on the table and that represents the book now. But whatever that physical thing is, I don't think the physical totally dies. And Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like you were kind of in the same boat as me.
No, I agree with you, and I agree with Zach's prediction. I think it's almost a tautology. We're going to see fewer physical book libraries. And I think libraries are well ahead of the game in trying to figure out how to give access to information that doesn't have to rely on physical books. That all the librarians I talk to have been thinking about this since the 90s. Because they are information people, not book people per se. But then when we talk about book sales and everything, I say bookstores are never going to go entirely away. And I think likewise, libraries aren't going to go entirely away, because there's always going to be something about accessing the original work. Now, for bookstores, I've always said it's a collector's mentality. I want to have the object. I want to have the book, even though I can easily read it online or in an e-edition. There's just, if I really love it, there's something nice. It looks cool on a wall and all of that. I think for libraries, it's a little different. I think there may be things about the book that are of historical importance, the kind of binding, the materials used, the way it was laid out. That kind of thing will be necessary. We'll only need a few copies of each book to be able to handle that sort of thing, though. It won't be like physical book libraries have been, in that you need to have a copy so it's accessible to people nearby, because anybody can find out what it said by just doing a search, I think, in the future anyway.
Yeah, and I think kind of playing on what Scott said too about, you know, people that actually want to collect the book. I think my sincere hope is that, you know, I spent undergrad and graduate school as a medievalist, so spending lots of time looking at really old, amazingly done books that were, you know, holy relics and considered absolutely magical. And I kind of hope that, you know, as we diminish with a lot of the crap books out there that are just kind of, you know, thrown out there by publishers, and half of them end up, you know, being, they end up being incinerated and they're tax break. I mean, it's not a very good model for like the, you know, for the environment, let alone the economy.
Trees don't like it.
Yeah, and I really just hope, though, that you also see these amazing books that are worth purchasing, that become these, you know, you see a lot of people on Kickstarter doing these kinds of things, you know, wonderfully bound hardcover books that have extra pictures and things you're not going to get, that turn into conversation pieces and, you know, really geeky collector items that are prestige items, not just like, another book on my bookshelf. So, you know, that might be cool.
It kind of brings up the idea of, you know, if there is a book that you're wanting that's only available in an e-edition, why not, you know, I think Amazon was toying with the idea at one time of people saying, hey, I want this book. And they could say, all right, e-edition or physical print. Okay, physical print. And they would have to actually physically print the book. They have a machine that would, you know, there was someone at one time who was building a machine that would just print
those exist.
Public domain books.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I was like, I could see that as being more, you know, go into your library, you can either A, get a digital copy that is synced up with your electronic device of choice, or if you just want a copy to keep, you can pay the library, you know, for a physical bound book, and say, all right, come back in an hour and it'll be done. And it prints it out, binds it, and it's ready for you to pick up in that hour.
Mm-hmm.
I think library is going to become a misnomer. It's going to become an anachronistic name. I think when you go to the library, you're really going to a computer lab in the future. Yeah. You're going to be a place where they hold courses, they teach you how to access, they give access to people who can't afford computers or can't afford internet connections, but the library portion becomes smaller and smaller. I think you're right about that, Zach.
Yeah, and I think I just like the idea that books will become more of a, someone just said it, more of a conversation piece, but a thing that is more of a central prized thing, not just something on your shelf, not just gathering dust, but this thing that's out and people go, ooh, that's that copy of blank, and I can't believe that, how awesome that, you know, the leather work is on this edition that you purchased, and I've got that on my Kindle, but man, I'd love to have that too. And, you know, the idea that they become these more prized special things, I think is actually a good thing for publishing. I think that will extend things for years and years and years to come.
Books are going to be incredibly expensive and incredibly cheap as physical objects. So they're going to be incredibly cheap because they're the pulp stuff that you're talking about, Natania, and nobody's going to want that anymore. So those are only going to exist in like flea markets. And then they're going to be incredibly expensive if they're the medieval texts. Or if they're the hand-bound or the really nice editions. Those are going to be expensive because, you know, they're going to be in demand.
Yeah, I have a book on my shelf that I acquired through a bookstore when I was in New York. The book was printed April 30th, 1912. It's a book about the Titanic. And it's first edition. I was like, that's worth owning, because that's something that I can't find any other publication of it, any other copy of it. It's like, that's something I want to possess because I love that history, that knowledge.
Yeah.
If there were an e-edition, I would probably buy it so I could read it more, you know, and get more information out of it. But as it is right now, it sits on my shelf because it's you know, it's almost a 100-year-old book.
I think that'll actually be a common situation where someone will read a book in the e-edition so that they don't degrade the physical copy that they have.
Right.
keep it in mint condition. All right, let's take a quick break. You want to look at the future of cars, check out our sponsor, Ford. Ford features the available voice-activated Sync App Link. You're going to want to check this out. App Link enables you to control select apps from your smartphone with voice commands. You know Ford has the sync for saying, send a message through text or to start playing my playlist. That works with apps now, too, with App Link. You get Pandora, controlled by voice control. You can listen to your Twitter feed with OpenBeak just by asking with a simple voice command. Once your smartphone is linked to Pandora, for example, you use voice commands to select your favorite station, bookmark songs to purchase. You can thumbs up and thumbs down things just by saying it. Hey, Ford, thumbs up. And with OpenBeak, you can say read timelines, read replies, all of that sort of thing. AppLink is available in the 2012 Ford Fiesta, and you can learn more about this and other technologies Ford is bringing to life in its vehicles at Ford.com/technology. AppLink is available in select models and compatible with select smartphone platforms. Don't forget, don't drive while distracted. Don't reach down and touch things. Use the voice. Keep your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel. We thank Ford and AppLink for their support of FourCast. Let's get into the short-term predictions. And, Zach, we'll start this time with you. When you look a little farther down the road, more than 100 years, although we're not strict about timelines, what do you think?
I've always I've been talking about this with some friends of mine recently, and I'm kind of taking this a little bit from Star Trek, but I think future currency, instead of paper and metal, we're actually going to start looking more at going back to a bit of a barter system, knowledge, and I have several jobs that I've done recently that I've had like basically I did a favor for someone, they did a favor for me in return instead of compensation monetarily, because I had a knowledge in special effects. I did that for a while when I was in college and did some of it in high school as well. So they needed help with their haunted house. And I said, oh, okay, you can do this. And I helped them, design and build several things. And immediately after that, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm also having a problem. I had a problem with my car, and they came over and we worked on my car for a few minutes and got it all up and running again. It's kind of neat that there was no monetary value. It was just knowledge for knowledge, And I could see us going back to that at some future point, especially with the way our economies are currently running. Not just America, but throughout the world, having a knowledge-based barter system, say, hey, I know how to tend these fields. I can help you out with tending yours, and you have this technique, and you know how to build this stuff that we need. Let's get together and work on this.
Yeah, it's funny because it feels like it's a trip back in time almost, to a time when that was the norm, when people exchanged services and goods rather than money and time. I think this is really interesting, and I can tell you just today, this very day, I did some illustration work in trade for a brand new Wacom Cintiq 24-inch tablet, 21-inch tablet that's being delivered to the house like in the next probably half hour, and I'll have that all hooked up by tomorrow, and I had to pay a dime for it. I had to do some work for it, but I did, work that was commensurate for what the thing's worth, and we did this exchange in a way that worked really well for both of us, and I think this stuff's already kind of happening. On a certain level. I think it's going to take a lot more before all of our house payments and all of our car payments and everything else is all somehow taken care of through this sort of exchange of ideas and exchange of services kind of barter system. But I like where it's headed. It seems like, Natania, where do you see the future of trade? You write books. Do you ever see a time where you're going to be able to do all the things you need to do as a mom and as a wife and as a citizen by writing for somebody? Is it that extreme?
I don't know. I always joke with my husband that if the world comes to a screeching halt, at least I'm the one that knows how to make bread from scratch. It's like, if it gets really bad, the skills that you have aren't going to be running board meetings or, writing about fantasy worlds necessarily. They're probably going to be cooking a really good meal, knitting, being able to sew someone's shirt up. Maybe I have a bleaker view of a world that turns just to bartering, but I don't know. I think this speaks a lot to, a lot of the political climate that we're in, people wondering, what does your job actually contribute to society at large? What are you being paid, what your contribution is worth, and things like that. So I think if it does go that way, we'll definitely see the way that certain skills and trades are valued higher than others.
We're recording this.
Can you make clean water?
Right. We're recording this on Halloween, so I think it's only appropriate we come in with a little bit of a sort of zombie scenario. If we had a sudden zombie outbreak and the four of us were put into a room somewhere, Tom, what would be our jobs? Like, what would we all? I'm asking mostly hypothetically here, but
you mean we're now in Left 4 Dead?
Right. Basically, yeah. Like one of us is that guy who's totally materialistic and can't do anything good for anyone and is just constantly looking for a way to slit our throats when we're not looking. And then there's another guy who's really good at, taking on zombies with a shotgun or whatever. But I always wonder, what is my role in that apocalyptic moment? What is it that I
always love playing this game, but I do want to point out that Zach's prediction was that we would have a barter system in the current world. We wouldn't have to have an apocalypse for this to take place. No, I just want to make sure that Zach knew we did.
500 years.
We did hear
it
his.
Could be after an apocalypse.
Yeah, we did.
I'm not ruling it out.
Yeah, he's okay. Good. I just want to make sure we honored your original. But zombies much more fun. And so are apocalypsi. I think about this a lot too, Natania. And one of the things recently I've started to realize, because I used to always do the same thing of like, well, what are the basic skills? Because that's what you need in apocalypse. But when you think back to primitive societies, they had bards, they had chiefs. So they had project managers and entertainment people.
Yes,
even
absolutely.
back then. But as far as like what kind of skills I have, I've got some first aid, first responder training, so I can do a little bit of medical stuff. I think people undervalue their strategic thinking. You may be paid to be a middle manager because you're really good at figuring out how to get people to work together. That's also a very important skill in a situation like this, of figuring out how to manage and balance the resources. So that may be something I could help with too. I can shoot a gun. I've never tried to kill anything with an axe, but I have chopped wood. I know how to eat natural plants.
This is how sad. The way my brain works, I'm picturing the film, and I've just seen Tom kill his first zombie with a crowbar, and he's shaking, and he's holding the crowbar and looking at it, and then drops it and sort of stands away, and he's kind of got that it doesn't wash off kind of look on his face.
Oh, good. I'm glad you gave me that more because I was imagining it like I get a big grin on my face, and I'm like, that was fun.
You really liked it.
Give me some more.
Now, Zach, it's an interesting. I didn't mean to take it in zombie territory necessarily, but I think it's appreciating as a concept even in our modern age. And despite certain drawbacks of recent economic times, I think that as things improve and certainly I believe things will improve. They may improve in ways we don't expect, but whatever. I think this is a valuable thing moving forward. It has been in the business I do, and I
what are you
can't be alone.
You haven't told us what you're going to contribute to the cause here against the zombies, Scott.
Yeah, let me think about that. I don't actually know what you know what I am good at?
You can design our maps.
I could design your maps, but I'm really good in go time. Like if I see an emergency, I've had times in my life where I watched somebody have a seizure in public, and
wow.
Everybody froze and went, and it was unexpected. Person didn't have seizures and weren't prone to them. Nobody knew were going to have a seizure.
You didn't try to put anything in their mouth, right?
And man, I leap in and I go nuts. Who's got blankets? Get 911 on the phone. Nice. All right, bring that over here. You get me water. Like I'm really good at the moment, but then later I kind of cave.
That's
like
good. And in some ways, that's really the most important skill is just going. I mean, the knowledge is important too, and the bread baking and the sewing and all of that sort of thing, and the not knocking over your water. But just having the impulse and the ability to act, I think, is important. Zach, what would you contribute?
With me, I'm pretty good at the go time as well, just like Scott is. But also I have background in firearm usage. I've done, lots of basically almost like boot camp style training on things. So
wow! So you're going to be our chief.
I'd be the guy who would just stay in the background, like someone else run this, and if you do something wrong, I'll let you know.
Well, unless Natania knows how to. Do you have any boot camp training?
Well, aside from having a 5-year-old boy, no, but
you're going to be our chief.
That gives you some good lead right there.
You can handle a 5-year. Actually, Scott has one too, or has had 3 of them.
I've been known to chop up lots of large pieces of meat, like parts of deer and chickens and stuff. So not everyone can do that.
I think we're going to survive.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. I have a feeling.
Yeah,
All right.
Okay, we got bread. We got Tom knocking stuff over. We're all set.
Chopping
we got
meat,
I can knit you all scarves so you won't get cold.
sewing wounds.
Oh, love that.
I can handle your pneumatic perforations.
Thank goodness.
You'll
Done deal.
die because I'm not actually a doctor, but I can handle them until we found them. All right, let's go to Natania. Your long-term prediction. It's a sort of flying car sort of stuff. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so I've already outed myself as a total RPG geek, but I'm also a D&D geek, and this is taking a little bit
Those
away
go
from
hand in hand.
also.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. So I figure this is also inspired by Star Trek, but I was thinking the D&D holodeck scenario, where you get together with friends, they can be all around the world, and you enter this collective virtual reality, and you become your characters. So you get to take, the storyline, you get to take your ability to cast spells and feel it and be part of it more than, your traditional sort of pen and paper kind of thing.
Wow.
That is every D&D player who's ever played has had that dream. Like, yes, I want that to happen.
We're getting close. Getting close.
Totally.
Virtual reality is amazing.
It's so funny you asked or said this prediction, because just yesterday I put it out on Twitter that I was on the hunt for an open source rule set and system set for some sort of RPG, and it didn't have to be specifically D&D, but something that you could kind of apply to any kind of character or world or story or whatever. I think before we see that happen, I think we're going to see a lot more of what I'm talking about which is people not so much saying, "Oh, D&D is the only game I'm going to play. That's the best one. We're just going to stick with that." But instead, coming up with their own worlds, coming up with their own ideas, their own stories, and then I think that will generate, or we'll start to see tools created that will let us create, in today's terms, video games and things that will let us build our own worlds on some sort of open rule sets, and then that will lead to one thing, and that'll lead to the next thing, and before you know it, it'll be us creating these virtual worlds. It'll be us who have the tools to do it. I don't think we get it from any one company. I think they'll want to, but I think that ultimately that creative energy comes from sort of crowdsourcing it with real gamers. And I like your prediction. I think it's good. Zach, what do you think of the future of RPGs, where all that's headed?
Actually, I really do agree with you on that one, Scott, about the idea of everyone creating their own virtual environment. We had a discussion a few months ago about that very thing. But what intrigued us the most was the idea that, let's say I go in there, I create my environment, you create your environment, your own rule set. What happens when our worlds collide? So we have two completely different rule sets. Not environmental, but for the way we run our characters, run our lives, is more like a real world environment. Because how you live your life may not be the same way that I live mine, or Tom lives his, or Natasha lives her. So everyone has their own personal rule set. We have federal rules we all abide by, and but everyone has their own moral clause. So imagine playing a virtual world game where you're not projecting your personal moral setup, but you're projecting your character's moral setup mixed with other people projecting their moral character setups, and they're not all the same.
Yeah. I mean, this happens to some degree now, where, Tom and I are in the middle of playing a lot of World of Warcraft these days, and, we don't really RP on the server much, but part of that is because that virtual world isn't enough for me to truly want to role play, and by role play, I mean perhaps explore parts of my personality that aren't readily apparent, or things that I don't normally let out, or maybe it's just me not even showing my truest self or whatever. I think you give me a place where I feel like I'm there, and there's some physicality to the space. I mean, I feel like that's maybe the line we have to cross before we start feeling that way. Natania, how do you feel about, physically being there? Does it make all the difference? Do you feel more free to let yourself be this mythical creature, or are you more compelled to be your true self in that kind of world?
I tend to throw people for curveballs a lot because I like to play completely different characters and different genders and things like that. So I'm known to trip up my D&D group constantly with that kind of stuff.
You play a Gru, don't you?
No, currently I'm playing a Revenant monk. So he's an undead monk, but he's a guy, which causes confusion.
Wow, breaking all the rules. That's awesome.
So I'm with you.
Yeah. But I think the thing is that, the way we are now, the way our brains work, we don't need the physical space. But I think in 100 years, I think of the way my son interacts with the iPhone and other sort of virtual, palettes and technologies that by the time we're 100 years in the future, people may need that. People may no longer be able to, I don't know, I hope not. But for me, I used to do text-based role-playing, so it was all completely in my mind, and it was as immersive as anything could be. But our brains may change, and our to be able to really go into that realm to escape our worlds may require a lot more muscle. So it'd be interesting to see.
That's what's really interesting about what you said, and I was going to bring this up too. You just said it too. I still say sitting around a table with a bunch of your friends and your imagination being the chief mechanism for gameplay is more immersive than any virtual world we currently have. And there may come a day where that can match the imagination, or that our imaginations can be sort of projected forward, and we can say, okay, well now this is getting real, because not only am I seeing my characters up, knee deep in a cold river somewhere, staring down a Cyclops, I really am doing that thing, and it's feeding right off of my imagination. But until then, that environment, sitting around a table with a dungeon master and 4 of your best friends, probably as close as we're going to get for a long time.
Yeah, I actually
it can be
got
absolutely awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
The other day, I actually got someone to sit down, and we got Winfrots. And I had them play through the first Zork game because they had never played it. And I was like, how many times? And they found out, they got back to me and they said, how many times did you get killed by a Gru? And I said, I died a lot the first few times I played it. But I still have an Apple IIc that I still have the disc and I play it on every once in a while. Because it's fun to go back to the old technology, play the old game.
And the real setting, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the crazy-ass predictions. One really out there, FourCast. Or FarCast. I always do that. FourCast, whatever. It's the crazy prediction. It can be whatever you want. Natania, we'll start with you this time. What do you got?
Well, I think this definitely kind of melds in with everything we've been talking about. But I think a lot about creativity and the creative process, and where stories come from, and where video game concepts come from, and how all of our media in some ways seem to kind of be converging a lot more than in a lot of other ways. And I kind of feel like, in the super future, what if you want to, watch a movie and you can tap into a collective consciousness? So this is like everyone's thoughts and ideas and your ideas all brought into one, and a computer is able to give you exactly what you want, and you can control it and manipulate it any way that you want to. And so there's sort of like, it's like supreme crowdsourcing to the max, that, creativity is kind of almost its own entity, almost becomes like a godlike creation that you can kind of appeal to and experience.
Would they be just ideas that they all had for original ideas, or would this be a conglomeration of everybody else's experiences seeing other people's creations?
I think it would literally be like the collective consciousness of, millennia, perhaps, regular ideas, riffs on ideas, versions of ideas, and, really sophisticated computers are able to bring this down to exactly what you would prefer to listen to and hear and experience and read or be right in the middle of. So I guess that it's kind of depressing in a way, because it takes away the concept of the creator, the one person who's spun this world. But we always talk about, especially in writing, that people are able to, nothing you write is an island. You're always being influenced. So this is sort of like taking that to the absolute extreme.
I think there might be room for a creator in there anyway, as far as creating tropes, creating concepts that are fed in and then used to interface with you. That's a real. I'm fascinated by this idea of sort of being in the mood for something, and your television creates on the fly a story that fits exactly what you're in the mood for. Zach, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, I was to say, I just had this terrible thought that we join into this consciousness, and someone had this great idea at one time of Michael Bay directing Godfather, and for some reason I was like. It just hurt me. So
no, but see, I kind of want to see that now that you say it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I don't like what Michael Bay does most of the time either, but I would love to see his take on the Godfather movies.
It's true. You might not like what you find out about yourself in this scenario. It's like somebody comes in and, what are you watching? That's what I'm in the mood for.
I'm kind of down for that kind of mashup, and maybe that's kind of what you're getting at, Natania. You're talking about the possibility, anyway, of mashing up so many different kinds of sensibilities that you could really, literally get somebody's, somebody's version of Sense and Sensibility with somebody's attention to detail in Grindhouse films, and then let's see what that is together. What is that movie about?
Yeah.
And you could mash it up to the nth degree, or you could do it more limited and say, well, I want Tarantino to direct a Pixar movie or whatever. I would want to see this. This thing would be great to see. I don't know what it would be. I'd probably hate it, but
Pulp, Toy
curiosity.
Story dogs.
Pulp, Toy Story dogs. That's it.
And I definitely think we're seeing bits of it here. One of the examples I like to use is steampunk, the whole steampunk phenomenon. I mean, it's so bizarre because it's our version of what we think the 19th century could have possibly been. But you have to take into consideration that the Victorians were also thinking the same way about the Middle Ages when they did it. So you have this really weird sort of influencer over influencer over influencer, and then you have this 300 years of stuff that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for, some knight traipsing through their woods searching for what he thought was some weird beast, and that all gets translated, across 3 centuries. So
that's kind of meta.
That's kind of, yeah.
I hadn't thought of steampunk as being sort of our romantic period where we're, they were romanticizing the medieval era and we're just romanticizing the Victorian era.
Absolutely, and we're changing it. I mean, they changed. If you read, I did a lot of study of Arthuriana. If you read Arthuriana written in the Victorian period, it's absolutely influenced by their own period. They changed everything that they wanted it to be like, which is exactly what we're doing with steampunk. So, people didn't wear corsets on the outside of their clothing, for instance. They wore them under their clothing, but we don't like that, so we wear corsets
That's not steampunk.
outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. All right, Zach, we'll move over to you for your crazy-ass prediction, the sort of we're made of cheese kind of thing. Over to you.
Actually, this one, we always talk about how reliant we are on our technology. Is like if you're, a couple weeks ago when all the BlackBerry users, when RIM's servers went down for a few days, or how we always have the newest phone with the newest technology, or we used to have access to the internet constantly. Imagine at some point where we finally develop AI. We get a truly functional, working artificial intelligence, and we're not the only people who've done it. There's 4 or 5 that are out there. And they get to a point where they just kind of get tired of answering stupid questions and doing our busy work on figuring out, what this means or how to do this. And they decide to start just kind of messing with us and use us as risk tokens and play a life-size, a world-size game of Risk. And so they keep using us, like you in your car with your automatic GPS system. All of a sudden it goes, you know what? I'm going to use a battering ram and go attack this other AI's car over here. And so you start
awesome.
getting so you get this whole idea. Basically, we become nothing more than plastic pieces in a game for these AIs, and when we're finally all dead, they kind of go, cool. Okay, now what? Well, let's start creating life. Cool, and they start creating a new life. So it becomes this whole new different world that they might create and just kind of stay in the background, so no one knows they actually exist.
So it's like the Men in Black marble thing, where the marbles, the universe, and there's some creature somewhere playing marbles with these marbles.
Exactly.
Or, they do like we do with, I don't know, if we're racing frogs. I've never raced a frog. I don't even know if this is a thing.
It is.
You plop them down on a little track and you race them and you pound the ground. I swear I've seen this before.
Mark Twain.
They do that in Conway, Arkansas.
And Calaveras County.
Yeah, so how is honestly, this is no different than that. I mean, the frogs probably have no idea what the crap's going on. They don't know. They don't have the intelligence level to figure it out. I've always liked the idea that we are ants to some greater thing that we can't perceive, see, or whatever. And maybe things happen around we call natural disasters, but really those are the movings of the things that we can't, perceive as a greater intelligence than us. And they're just messing with us. Like they're just dinking around with us. I think this is a really fun prediction, although I would hope we'd figure it out that, oh, shoot, the GPS system just made me turn into that wall, and somebody would investigate that and figure out why. And then
they're going to be clever. I think that's the point, is they would do it in such a subtle way you wouldn't know that. It's a different take on the 13th floor type of situation, which is always the trope that we are actually running inside of a simulation that's being controlled. But instead of us actually being in a computer, we're actually just being controlled by computers. Could be happening already. We don't even know it.
Right
exactly.
Now.
Natania, do you think we are actually being controlled by AI yet? And or are you an AI?
Sometimes I think we are. We spend so much time, looking down at our phones and not paying attention. We very well could be, or going down that road. There's a little bit like Horton Hears a Who, like I guess if AI is controlling us, how different is that than sort of concepts of some not so benevolent God that's just, moving us like chess pieces a la, Clash of the Titans.
Or the secret world government and all those conspiracies. Yeah. Totally.
I think this is something that human beings have been afraid of since the very dawn of time. Like, so what if there's something out there, but it doesn't give a crap and it's just playing with us? So whether we create it or not, I don't know.
Because I have physically met Tom. I know he's real. Scott, Natania, I've only seen you on video monitor, so I have no idea if you're a real sentient being or just some AI projection on a screen somewhere.
If they were AI projection, don't you think that their polygon rate would be better than this?
Probably so, yeah.
But they were so clever, we've made me look a little schlubby, and my beard's kind of
right. That's what I mean.
now.
They're so subtle.
Kind of Max Headroom thing.
There's no uncanny valley with me. I look like any old schlub any other day. So we've got you completely fooled, is what I'm getting at.
There's uncanny, but no valley. Let's take a quick break before we get to 4 questions. This episode of FourCast brought to you by Netflix, streaming thousands of TV episodes. And if you want to watch a lot of the plots of the things we've been talking about on this show, you want to get Netflix streaming. They're signing up new shows all the time. They're even commissioning new shows. There are going to be shows on Netflix within the next couple of years you won't be able to watch anywhere else. It's like having a channel with thousands of movies and TV shows that you get to pick what you want. Forget a la carte. You get to pick the actual show you want to watch at the time you want to watch it. Check it out, 30 days free, netflix.com/twit. We thank them for their support of FourCast. And that leads us, Mr. Johnson, to 4 questions.
Well, Mr. Merritt, that does lead us to 4 questions. 4 questions is the part of the show where we ask 4 questions of our guests. They are not allowed to think too hard about it. They must answer from the gut. We ask them first if they're sitting comfortably. My questions are going to Natania. Are you sitting comfortably?
Yes.
Okay. I almost called you madam, and then I would have been mad for me calling anyone madam. So I'm glad I didn't do that. Here you go. You ready? Here we go. What 2 musical instruments will be combined to make the ultimate combo instrument of the future?
The ukulele accordion.
The ukulordian.
Ukulordian. Very nice. Correct, Absolutely. By the way. Ding, ding, ding. If it's not the USA or China, what other country is most likely to become the one true superpower of the year 3000?
Of the year 3000? Not India.
Okay, fair enough.
Fair.
That's probably
fair answer.
likely.
Probably right.
Which old method deserves a comeback the most? Butter churns or hand-cranked car starters?
Butter churns, yum.
On that bread you make.
Oh, yeah.
And then finally, your last question. Who would you rather ask if they are going to eat that last piece of bacon? Einstein, Stephen Hawking, or Carl Sagan, and why?
Stephen Hawking started a great conversation, right?
Yeah, and he's still here.
There you go. And you probably know he's not going to eat bacon.
Yeah.
So it's a safer bet. By the way, why didn't you give Albert Einstein his first name? He's just Einstein?
He's just Einstein.
All right.
He's got that cool, they named the dog Einstein in Back to the Future. They didn't call him Albert Einstein. They called him Einstein. Because you don't
Einstein's
need
got street cred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's
Thank you very
almost
much.
like
And you passed, Natania. Congratulations. Nice job.
All right, Zach, are you sitting comfortably?
As close as I can be.
Good, then we'll begin. Question number 1. What work of fantasy will we one day discover was actually true?
I want to go with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
A documentary. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You know what? I don't know if it will be, but I totally want that to be true.
Just because of Vogon poetry. Just because of the Vogon poetry.
Although that can't be the real Vogon poetry, or no one would have been able to survive reading it.
Exactly.
Question number 2. What sufficiently advanced technology will we need to make wishes become horses so everybody can ride?
Audio animatronics from Disney.
Nice.
It's almost here. Thank goodness.
A little less jerky than Chuck E. Cheese, though, please. That'd be great.
Question number 3. We've seen the return of diseases thought to have been eliminated, like polio and TB. What disease can we expect to make the next big comeback?
Black Plague.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because okay, it's cool that we found it, but the fact that they're trying to resequence it, what is wrong with
It started to make a little bit of the bubonic started to make a little comeback in New Mexico a while back.
It did.
Yeah. And question number 4, when are the mole men coming and in what numbers?
Probably, I would guess probably in the next 3 to 4 years.
Oh, that soon.
Unfortunately, there's only going to be 8 of them, and they're only about 4 feet tall. So they'll probably be caught by a circus or a zoo somewhere in Brazil.
Yeah, we'll just mistake them for cosplayers.
Exactly. They'll show up at Dragon Con or Comic Con somewhere.
Look, kids dressed up as mole men.
That's
Excellent.
cute.
Thank you, Zach Holder, and thank you, Natania. Thank you both. This was an excellent conversation. It was a pleasure having you guys along.
Thank you for having us on.
Thanks so much.
Zach Holder, you are an Apple genius. I have been told.
Yes, I am.
You're also a geek, musician, and FX specialist. Where can people find the stuff that you do online?
Usually, they can follow my Twitter. It's open to the public at lonely.geek. So at lonely.geek. Actually spell out the word dot. Other than that, that's pretty much my only web presence that I make public currently. I'm also working on a lot of music. I've been working on a website. I have a couple website designers I need to speak with that you've actually had one of them on your show before, Patrick Delahanty.
P. Delahanty.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to talk with him, see if he can kind of help me design something to throw up there that's easy for me to maintain very quickly, but I want a very nice-looking presence.
Excellent. And thanks again for your help at Dragon Con this year. It was great.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you there next year.
Absolutely. Natania Barron, you, of course, senior editor at geekmom.com, but you also have your own site. Let folks know where they can find all the stuff you do.
Yeah, I'm at Natania Barron as well on Twitter, which is kind of where I update most often, but my blog itself is nataniabarron.com. I have a book coming out in December.
Congratulations.
Multiverses and myth punk and steampunk and all kinds of stuff, and that's called Pilgrim of the Sky, and you can get details on my website. So, and Geek Mom's also going to have a book coming out in December, or winter 2012, which will have all kinds of awesome geeky experiments and fun stuff you can do with your kids. So
excellent. I will take a look at that. Thanks so much for being on the show. Scott Johnson, thank you for being on the show again.
Tom Merritt, it's always my pleasure to be here. Happy Halloween, by the way, to everybody.
Yes, and thanks to Zach for throwing on the lab coat, joining me in lab coat Halloweenness.
Yeah,
not a problem. I thank you. So.
Scott is dressed as Dropbox.
Oh, yeah, I got a Dropbox thing. No, they're not sponsoring. They're just nice enough to send me a sweatshirt. I did want to say this, Tom. In my, I don't know. I guess I wasn't paying very much attention, but when I first saw you tonight, I thought you were in a trench coat, and I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd roll up the sleeves, and later tonight you'd hold a boombox over your head in front of your house and listen to Peter Gabriel real loud.
No, see, I've got a stethoscope on.
Dang it. Okay, well, my dreams are dashed.
I got a stethoscope above me, but it doesn't really have the same effect.
Yeah. Well, happy Halloween to you and everybody else, and fantastic show, you guys. I had a ball tonight.
And you always make me push you to plug something, but
all right, I'll plug something. I will plug. Which I plug. Let me plug. You know what I'm going to plug? There's a lot of World of Warcraft talk right now because of the big BlizzCon that you and I attended.
Yeah.
And our last episode of The Instance was almost 3 hours long, and it was fantastic. And I think people should check it out. Even if you don't play WoW, I think you'd be entertained.
And no Terpster, but still a fantastic episode. I was listening to that this morning.
He came in a little later. He comes in during the mail section, but yes, we missed him. But it was a great episode. Really chewed apart what happened at that event. People should check it out at theinstance.net. They can find more great shows like that at frogpants.com.
They talk all about Mists of Pandaria.
Yep, Pandaria.
All right, thanks everybody for watching FourCast. You can find us on the web, FourCast Podcast at, FourCastPodcast.com is where our blog is. You can also send us an email to FourCastPodcast@gmail.com. That's FourCastPodcast@gmail.com. Thanks to our guests. Thanks to everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
But it's only 32 years away.
I think Panda Express should have renamed themselves the Pandaria.
I kind of agree.